Yeah. And then I think, I don't know my notes. No, it's not. So one button will be index finger, and leave it on the index finger, and then I think I'll just do this. Or I'll do that. And then do the point. And then I think it's a blank one next. Yeah. Oh, no, shoulders. Next one. Next one. It's going to be all choreographed with music. So. The next one. Next one. So it'll all be to the music, so we'll have like pretty choreographed. So I came to making this piece. I originally was working on a movement idea of patterning, of repetitive patterning that would evolve and emerge and morph and transform myself and perception of what people would see me doing through a gradual incremental movement shift. But then I actually had a back injury, which prevented me from dancing and moving fully. So then I ended up having to change what I was originally working on and make something that was physically more simple. And so I was interested in how I could still alter the perception of what my body is and what it's doing, and also relate it to past work in relationship to language. And I've been really interested in the discrepancy between the use of language and dance. So I decided to then combine these ideas together, and I wanted to work on if a word was paralleling an action or a representation of the word. So if I say arms and I show you my arms and do something with my arms, you would then have an association with what the body part is in relationship to the word, and it's fairly obvious. And then the idea is then to sort of use those as building blocks that would eventually build towards a dance, so that it's almost dissecting the elements of what dance is and sort of meaning and association that could be attached to it, but then also draw attention to the fact that that isn't necessarily the only thing it means, but it is one thing. And at this stage, I want to continue more on the piece, but I haven't gotten to the point of complexity of how to change and alter how there are multiple meanings for action, but I'm starting at sort of this preliminary place as it's almost like a school lesson in demonstrating the components and basics of dance.
I have, in my work, there are several strands of investigation. I'm very interested, for example, in manipulating the viewing experience of the audience. But another thing that's been very strong interest of mine is investigation of movement. And I have worked for many years to define a quality of movement that I felt was unique to me, which is this is perhaps a classic kind of investigation in contemporary dance, that there's an interest in individuality of movement, but it's something that I was very interested in pursuing, and I have created a quality, I guess I would describe it as something that's awkward, but also languid, or spastic, but also graceful in a strange way, or liquid or something. And I've established this a way of moving, and I'm now very interested in how to manipulate it and also to share it with other people. And I work a great deal with improvisation, and I had just premiered a piece in February in New York, where in the process of creating the movement, there were other aspects of the work as well, but in creating the movement, I worked from improvisation that was very open and then narrowed it to improvisation that was much more defined, tightly scored. And I was interested then in picking up, using the same material or similar movement material, but working in the opposite way, and starting from movement that was very defined, almost like set choreography, and manipulating that movement and then opening it up to allow some room for improvisation. So I feel that in this piece that I am working on here, I'm at towards the beginning of that process. And I developed this material, and I am interested in then later sharing it with other dancers and building it together with a group of performers. In the moment, I'm working in silence because my questions are related to the movement itself. But I do have musical ideas that in the future I want to develop. And one thing that I've been working on is all of the elements of the performance being generated by the performers themselves. So I'm interested in creating a vocal score that will be combined with the movement score, so that the performers, while they're dancing, will be creating, I mean, in a way singing, but more kind of abstract vocalizing, but then that will create, they will create music. But for the moment, just silence.
decided to perform our solos together as a trio. And we did. We used music that I brought that my friend Justin made.
I've never made a solo before. I work a lot with one other performer, a male performer. So what I'm showing tomorrow is essentially a solo that I am imagining on him and I'm embodying for him. For the past few years, I've been working more experientially, more internal embodiment, not so much outside. I'm not looking at what the dance looks like. I'm creating it from an inside feeling and perspective. I'm in my work, so I don't step outside and look at it. I have to make it and judge it and assess it from an inside point of view. Which can be difficult, but is also, I feel like, just the way that I make work. My work has an inside structure rather than an external structure. So for this solo and for what I'll be working on for the next year, I'm interested in this image, this idea of the image. So the image is something you can imagine and see, like an image I'm working with is holding flowers and beating them over my head and using them as sort of I'm using the image of the flower on my body to get to movement research, to a researched movement exploration, rather than the way I've been working is before I understand the work, I research it. I research it to understand it. And right now, I'm trying to start with a concept and to start with a more external visual landscape and a sort of environment to then get to a more internal quality. I ask, Walter will come in at the end of my piece to start his piece to sort of dissolve my piece out, because it's not necessarily a finished, it's not necessarily the most intensely researched idea. It's very new to me, this image idea, using images. So him beginning at my ending takes out this intensity that an ending can have, and we fizzle, we fade or wash away, just and move seamlessly into another idea, so that things can just they don't have to connect. You know, our work is very different, but I think there is a desire for.
We're actually excited about that just happened from having this time to kind of experiment in the theater. And that's what things like this are really good for.
Yeah.
As opposed to showing up to a space with a work that's made and you just perform it. Mm-hmm. That you spend some time in the theater, you play around, and you adapt to the space. And the space will always tell you something. And it will give you other ideas and things that you didn't necessarily think of until you got here. And that, being allowed to work that way is really exciting, because then you can make the performance very fresh and immediate. My piece, I had not made a solo, at least for myself, in a really long time. And early on in making work, I would make solos and then set the material on other people or incorporate people into my solo as a way of starting a group piece. But in the last couple of years, I've just made work for large groups of people. So the solo idea was exciting to me to try to, or it's actually more of a challenge. And so what ended up happening is I started making this structure that became kind of an accumulation of things that I had done in my work in the past. Often, some of it with myself, but often with other people. And so my work is, I make the sets and the costumes and all the visual things, and So I started kind of accumulating some of the material that I had used in other pieces and recontextualized it for this piece to see what would happen. Does it fit together? So it's kind of like a layering of images of things that I have used in the past in a new context. And also some material that I've been working on for something in the future. So that became the process. And it wasn't until I got here and we were trying it out in the theater that it's starting to make sense to me. And I think I really won't know what it is until I actually perform it tomorrow. That's a really good question, and I don't know if I really have an answer, but I think it's part of, I am looking for that. I think it's a question I'm asking myself. And it does have something to do with whatever I identify as myself, and this idea of creating personas that are both masks and in some way they reveal. But I'm trying to figure that out. The way the ideas come to me are sometimes just very immediate. They might be responding to a material, or it may just be an image comes up, and then I try to create it and see what happens. And in trying to create an image that's in your head, it always changes. So then you just deal with the materials that you have. A lot of the process for me is like having this idea of something and then using what I have at hand to make it, and then adapting to this kind of, it's always like a lesser version of what's in my head, and then having to accept it. And so they're using the heels and the stockings was originally an attempt to get to a kind of historical costume, and then letting it kind of adapt in a more contemporary way. But then I also, one of the things that relates to the earlier question about the relationship between self and the personas is that I see myself when I'm doing this as a child playing dress up with my sister's clothes. And so there's this very queer layer of being a gay child and wanting to be a girl and putting on dresses. And I don't always think about that consciously when I'm making the work, because it's just so old. It's such an old story in a way. But then yesterday in particular, putting all of these layers together, I was like, oh yeah, I'm still playing dress up.